Good morning, everyone here in Brussels and joining us online. It's a balmy 30 degrees outside in Brussels today. Things are also heating up globally, and this would be an introduction in the past years to talk about climate change at the EU Sustainable Energy Week. But in these days, when we say the globe is heating up, it's more about the competition between the different parts of the world and how we can improve economic positions, especially now in Europe. So this year, one of the main themes of the European Sustainable Energy Week is to help Europe drive forward for this different kind of net zero industries. So what better way to address this by actually looking at a sector which is already been trying to do this for the past 8 years, and that's the battery sector. So my name is Wouter IJzermans. I'm the Executive Director of the Batteries European Partnership Association. I will lead you to this session today, where we're actually going to see what lessons have been learned from the efforts in the past years, in the past 8 years, when we tried to get this battery sector off the ground. Are there lessons in there for the other net zero industry technologies that we also want to build up here in Europe? And actually, are those lessons transferable? Because the world has changed so much in the meantime. Do we still maybe readjust our own strategy within the battery sector to make this happen? So to do that, we have 2 interesting keynote speeches, and then we will dive into the details with a panel session first, and then an interview focusing specifically on innovation. So to kick things off, we have with us Teo Lombardo from the EEA. He's a chemist and he's an analyst there and has contributed to many of the flagship projects. I think a lot of you here in the room know the Global EV Outlook. That's one of the main flagship documents that's being presented. So I want to give the floor to Teo to let us know, okay, where are we globally with the battery sector, what challenges are there, and how to proceed forward. So Teo, please take the floor.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invitation. So, yeah, to kickstart this nice discussion, I want to give you a sense of what's happening, what are the main trends in the battery sector globally today. So let's start from the good news. 2024 was a record year in terms of battery price decline globally. It dropped 20%. That is the largest single drop since 2017. So it's a very impressive result. And even more importantly, the battery price for battery electric cars reached under $100 per kilowatt hour. That is the threshold that typically we had in mind when speaking about electric cars becoming competitive with conventional cars. And indeed, affordability is on the rise, even though this is led, as you can expect, by Chinese producers mostly, but not only. So let's look how this picture looks like when you don't look only at the global trends, but also on the regional trends. And here the situation is a bit more nuanced. So you have China that moved the faster. Battery price declined nearly 30% in 2024 against about 10% in Europe. So that means that 2024 was a year in which battery price declined everywhere, but also the gap between China and the rest of the world widened. So there are different reasons behind that. Definitely economy of scale and market maturity, as well as a pace of innovation and manufacturing know-how, are part of it. One element that I would like to underline here is chemistry and chemistry choice. So there are 2 main family of chemistries today in the battery space. One is NMC-like, so based on nickel, cobalt, and other elements like manganese mostly. And the other side, you have lithium iron phosphate. The first enable longer ranges. The second is cheaper, but thanks to innovation now it has performance that are suited and sufficient for basically all application for electric vehicles. So globally, these 2 chemistries in 2024 were about half and half in the EV market, about half one and half the other. But as you can see from the slide, when you look regionally, there is a big spread. So this LFP, so the cheaper chemistry, is mostly pushed in China, where it accounted about 3/4 of the EV market in there, while this was just over 10% in the European Union and even less in the United States. Still, many European and American producers are looking more and more favorably to this type of chemistry, in particular for the mass market, that can profit from lower prices and for which the ranges that LFP enable are more than sufficient. But what are the implications of all these in the market space? So in this figure, you can see the Chinese, Korean, Japanese, and the rest of the world market share. So in different regions, you can see that in China, the EV battery market is basically dominated by Chinese producers. In the European Union, as well, is mostly Asian. Historically, it was Koreans, and still today, Koreans account for the largest share of EV battery sales. But the Chinese role is growing. It reached almost 40% in 2024. This is nearly double compared to 2 years ago. So this, looking at the company headquarters, we'll see that there is significant production in Europe, but it's mostly from companies like LG in Poland, that is a Korean company. So how it looks like when you get a bit broader picture. So we look also the upstream and downstream part of the supply chain. So if you start on the left, so the upstream, here I depict the cathode and nanoactive material production and trade by regions. And you can see that this is mostly a China story. Most of that are produced in there. The other sizable producers are Korean and Japanese, basically. Then you move to battery manufacturing. China is again by far the biggest, also because it has the biggest market, so the majority goes into China, but is also the largest exporter. But in this phase, you have sizable production in both North America and Europe, as you can see. And the electric car market is a bit more equilibrated in a sense. I mean, China, again, biggest producers, but the vast majority goes into the domestic market. In the case of Europe, the situation is about balance. If you look in particular at the European Union, that is not shown here, we do import electric vehicles from China, but we also export to other European countries or the United States about the same amount. So it is fairly equilibrated at the moment. The main challenge that we see there is not a flooding of Chinese cars at this point in time, but the difference in competitiveness and price between Chinese and European producers that is significant at this point in time. So to finish, looking a bit into the futures, the thing that you see in this slide is the manufacturing capacity for battery production in different regions divided by company headquarters. So the Chinese is the red, the Koreans are in orange, and so on and so forth. So you can see that if we focus for a moment on the European Union, there is some manufacturing capacity from European companies in Europe in 2024, and this will grow from now to 2030. But it's also important to have in mind that building manufacturing capacity is essential, but it's not enough. It's difficult, but scaling up production is harder. So reaching competitiveness and then produce batteries from European producers will be challenging. It will require efforts, it will require investments. If you remember the figures that I showed in 2024 for EV battery sales in European Union, it was mostly Korean and Chinese. You didn't see this European contribution in that figure, while you see it in this one. So looking forward, European producers will definitely have to continue investing and scaling up. Scaling up, learning how to do is the most important factor to reach competitiveness, but we will also require collaboration and investments from leading Asian producers because they are the one with the bulk of the manufacturing capacity today and with the experience to speed up this process as well. So there is a balance to find for having our European producers and collaboration with the established producers as well. And I stop here and thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Really interesting overview, very maybe even provocative message in there. It will be Asian dominated for a while. Later on, for the panel session, you'll be able to interact through Slido. We also have a poll there, and actually the main question is, can we have a battery manufacturing industry in Europe? So now let me introduce the second speaker of the day, Stefano Soro, active in the European Commission since 1994, Eurostat, DG Enterprise, Health and other things, and now already quite a while working first on the net zero industries, and actually since a very recent reshuffle, I think, head of the circular projects unit at DG Grow. So Stefano, please take the floor and.
Thank you, Al. Okay, good morning. Thank you for the invitation. I'm not going to tell insiders in the room or online things they don't know already, but I think we have a broader audience on the one hand, and on the other hand, consistency of message is often a good thing. I was asked to speak about the implications of the clean industrial deals on batteries, and to do that in 10 minutes, which is a wise thing. The late Pope Francis said that if a sermon lasts more than 10 minutes, you lose your faithful. So I'll try to stick to the assigned timeline. The first message I have is that batteries are important. Batteries are very important for a number of reasons. I don't have to explain them all, but when we're talking about electrification, open strategic autonomy, these very days the Commission is discussing the intermediate 2030 decarbonization emission reductions target, and how do we do that? We've preached for years that in 2050 we have to double the amount of electricity that we produce in Europe compared to 2020, and it all has to be decarbonized, so renewable and nuclear, if you want. Renewable and nuclear, and where do you store energy that is no base load? Then there's the whole big elephant in the room which monopolizes the debate, which is batteries for electric vehicle, with the proposed phasing out of the internal combustion engines for passenger cars by 2035, and so on and so on. So I think we all agree that batteries are important. And I think that the Clean Industrial Deal is testimony of the fact that this is a message that has been heard by the policymakers, and in particular by the Commission. It links with a stream of reflection that can be traced back to Fit for 55, but I'm not going to give you the whole story. Basically, with the Green Deal Industrial Plan and the Antwerp Declaration, then President von der Leyen's political priorities and the mission letters of EVP, Executive Vice President Séjourné, and other members of the Commission, we've come through what I see as a coherent narrative to the competitiveness compass, and from the competitiveness compass, the Clean Industrial Deal. Now, the Clean Industrial Deal, which was adopted in February by the Commission, has been presented as a business plan to decarbonize, reindustrialize, and innovate. And frankly, what are the implications for the battery industry? Well, the Clean Industrial Deal focuses on energy-intensive industries, so check. The clean tech sector, double check. And the idea is, on the one hand, to safeguard competitiveness from high energy cost and unfair global competition, and we'll get to that. And on the other hand, to allow the clean tech sector to expand in the EU, as it is a key enabler of competitiveness and decarbonization, and hence a key enabler of us meeting the targets that we have set ourselves and that we reiterate in policy action. Now, this business plan has 6 drivers, 6 core business drivers, and I'll try very briefly in the 6 minutes that I'm left with, 1 minute each, to try and draw the links with the batteries industry. The first one is the big competitiveness and handicapper, it's energy costs in Europe. Energy costs in Europe are much higher than those of our trading partners, and this is one of the biggest hurdles to the development of energy-intensive industries, of competitiveness. Now, given that we are a small, densely populated continent, which is not very rich in natural resources, in particular fossil fuels, and whatever natural resources we have are very difficult to extract, refine, and process for reasons that have to do a lot with political and civil society considerations. The way to go about achieving our objectives of competitiveness and decarbonization is to enhance renewables. And in particular electricity. So electric vehicles and storage of energy are particularly critical here. We have set ourselves an objective of increasing economy-wide electrification rate from 21.3% today to 32% in 2030, and 2030 is basically tomorrow. We have to install 100 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity every year until 2030, and renewables, as I mentioned, are not baseload, are not 24/7, and you need to store this energy somehow, and batteries are a big part of this objective. The second business driver is lead markets. We need to foster demand. The lack of stable and predictable demand for clean tech products is one of the issues we've started addressing, in particular with Net Zero Industry Act, and with my then team, we brought forward. The Clean Industrial Deal goes one step beyond, for the first time, clearly spelling out the objective of fostering demand for clean products made in the EU by introducing sustainability, resilience, and for the first time, European preference criteria. The idea would be to reach the headline target of the Net Zero Industry Act of having 40% of the most domestically produced key components of clean tech products in the EU market. The third business driver is financing. A energy-intensive, technology-intensive, cost-intensive industry like the batteries industry has a huge term of financial, a hugely sized set of financial needs, especially if we want to, reach the objective that I just mentioned, the 40%, et cetera, et cetera. We're lagging behind some of our competitors, in particular the Chinese, not technologically, but also in terms of the financial firepower that we can deploy to scale up this industry. The objective of the Clean Industrial Deal is to leverage 100 billion investment supporting the industrial transition, including for batteries, and in particular increase the firepower of the Innovation Fund, and in particular on batteries. In the Automotive Action Plan, that it's a spin-off of the Clean Industrial Deal, we mentioned the possibility to explore using the Innovation Fund to ramp up production of batteries in Europe, and we are exploring indeed. The fourth business driver is circularity and access to materials. With my now team, we're working on a Circular Economy Act that aims to reduce dependencies on primary materials imports and create business opportunities for the same reasons I mentioned before. We are not so rich in resources, and we don't have deserts full of stuff underground that we can tap from. There's also the work being implemented by our colleagues in DG GROW, in my directorate, on the Critical Raw Materials Act, which is a bit twofold. One, coordinate action, and two, go out in the world and try to diversify sources of supply. Basically, we have two weaknesses here. One is over-dependencies. One is the weakening of the manufacturing base, and the other one is over-dependencies on single sources of supply. I think we learned a lesson of the Russian gas. I hope it stays learned and it does not get replaced by other undesirable sort of monopoly of supplies on other critical raw materials. The fifth business driver is global markets and international partnerships. We have scarce primary materials needed for the clean transition. We have dependencies. We have, with the current transatlantic relationship or the current positioning of the US government at global level, run a risk of becoming the unrestricted outlet for manufacturing overcapacities, among other things, batteries, solar panels, and other things, and other clean tech value chains of the elephant or the dragon in the room. We're trying, including by our action on raw materials, to give European companies better access to third markets and essential inputs via trade agreements and via the implementation of the Critical Raw Material Act. We need to address global overcapacities. We have now a focus on diversification of sources of supply and, as I mentioned, on European content. We all know that the battery market and the clean tech market more broadly are growth market for the next at least 5 to 10 years. And we want to set up and lay down the conditions to have our share of this growth market. And last but not least, in particular for batteries, the last and but not least business driver is skills enhancement. A growth market is an employment market. This is, highly skilled, high value-added jobs that should come to Europe, but the availability of skills and skilled staff in a tight labor market does not come on its own, and this is why already years ago we started together with the IT and Energy, the battery academies, and that broadly with the new Unions of Skills initiative, we want to make sure that we lay down the conditions, including by knocking the member states' head together and try to bring down barriers to the internal market on the circulation of professions and skills, to lay down enabling and facilitating conditions to make sure that growth and development are accompanied by the right level of skilled staff. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Stefano. Very clear messages, 6 clear business drivers within the 10 minutes, so very, very, very well. So now let's introduce our panel and discuss these things more in depth. And for this, I want to invite James Watson, from Director General at Eurometaux, and a long history of similar positions in many energy-related associations. So James, take the floor and lead us through this wonderful landscape.
Yes, thank you very much, Wouter, and good morning, everybody. We are going to have a very good and lively discussion this morning. I am James Watson. I'll be your moderator for this discussion. I'm the Director General from Eurometaux. Eurometaux is the European Metals Industry Association, and there are no batteries without metals. I took note, Teo, when you showed your 2 choices, it's lithium or cobalt nickel. Of course, they're all metals. So metals will be the basis of the future of the economy. Indeed, Stefano mentioned the fact that we don't have a very high abundance of fossil fuels in Europe, but we do have plenty of mines, and we have a huge opportunity for recycling. So let's hope we move from fossil fuels to a metals-based economy. I know you have come to hear the experts speak, and not just me. I have a few questions for them. And I'm very lucky because we do have real experts with us today, and people who have very strong interest also in what you were saying, Teo, about the likelihood of whether China will still be the dominant factor for European manufacturing of batteries. This is something I think we should probably look into a little bit. But I will be joined by Ilke van Dagerwyk, the Director General of Recharge, which is the Association for Advanced Rechargeable Lithium Batteries, and indeed representing the full value chain. So I think that's actually important because you are dealing with upstream and downstream, so that's a good basis. I'll have Manasa Sridhar, the Innovation Manager for Iveco Group, of course, one of the most famous OEMs in the world. Trucks, buses, construction equipment. There's probably many more you can tell us about it in a minute, Manasa. But I will start with Florence Mellin, the Head of Communications and Public Affairs from Verkor. And I'll start with her because they are a European battery, cell and module manufacturer. And I think that we have to really take the view of our own battery industry to understand how they see their own future. And we've also mentioned, Stefano, the Clean Industrial Deal. Obviously, this has to be a huge opportunity for the battery sector in Europe. But I wonder, Florence, can you tell me what is the sort of policy framework that you think is still needed? And are we getting this from the Clean Industrial Deal to give battery manufacturing a competitive edge in Europe? Please.
Thank you for giving me the floor. So maybe some words about Verkor. Verkor is a French young battery cell manufacturer. So we have been founded 5 years ago, and we have already 2 locations. So an R&D center and a test center and pilot line, operational pilot line in the south of France, and a gigafactory, which will be operational in the north of France, close to Dunkirk. And therefore, we are pretty much concerned, and we have welcomed the announcence of the battery booster package to explore the support for production. Maybe I will also start with the why and emphasize what you said, Mr. Soro, why we need a European battery value chain. So we need it to ensure Europe leadership in clean mobility. So the battery counts for 30% of the electric vehicle value. We need it to ensure Europe's strategic autonomy. And secure critical raw material, and we need it to achieve Europe's objectives to supply 30% of its demand with a local made product. And cell manufacturing is a key link in this battery value chain. This is really a cornerstone. So what do we need now to answer your question? We need supply support, we need demand support, and we also need a kind of protection. Supply support, I mean, I've told it, we are 5 years old, almost 5 years old, and we are, like other European players, at a tipping point. So there will be 2 critical phases in our development, the ramp-up phase and the scale-up. And you mentioned it also, Mr. Soro. So we see definitely a need to support, financially support both critical phases, like other big regions did, China and America, with their program like ARA for America, or like massive subsidies since a long period for China. So the ramp-up is a critical period, because we have complex equipment to tune, we have yields to improve. It takes 2 to 3 years, and for this, definitely, we need lump sum subsidies to support it. Then the scale-up phase, up to 5 to 6 years. We are improving the processes. We also have higher volumes, and for this, the sector proposed a scheme to support this. It's important to stress that it's not a financial support for production costs, it's a financial support for success. We've seen earlier that we have a gap, a competitiveness gap still, with players which started earlier, simply started earlier than Euro did, and also have been supported massively. So we need to do something similar. And the support scheme that the sector has proposed for this scale-up period is a digressive one, so start higher with the support and then digressive. It's important because it shows that the sector is ready also to do homework and to be competitive. This support will be limited in the time, so up around 4 to 5 years. And this is also connected to delivered sales. And therefore, I've said this is definitely a financial support for success and not just for output-based or production support like we heard. So my message or statement would be, yes, we are on the competitive path, and we can be a solid player and a solid supplier for the car makers, unless and provided we get similar chances to grow. I talk about demand also. Definitely, we need electric vehicle demands, and it needs to be stimulated. Without volume, we won't grow. And last but not least, we also need to level a bit the playing field and protection in order the European battery value chain can grow and reach a certain maturity.
Thank you, Florence. I think that's a very comprehensive answer indeed, and I think I quite liked some of your little flourishes in talking about, you need to have success, support for success, not call it production support, which is interesting because my next question was going to be to Ilke about what kind of production support you would like to see through the Clean Industrial Deal, but we'll change it to say, what do we need in terms of support to have success for supply? And please, Ilke, feel free to introduce your organisation in more words than I did earlier. Good to have you with us.
Thank you, James. So I'm representing Recharge, and if you are the backbone with the metals, I think batteries are really the backbone of an electrified society. And a lot of the discussion, recent discussion that we also have heard is really turning around cell supply for the automotive industry. And while this is very much true, so I think we also should not forget that batteries are really needed in so many other applications that is really entering in all aspects of our lives, from mobile application all the way now into a sector that is growing actually much faster than the automotive sector, and that is a stationary storage, where batteries and other storage solutions really can support also the introduction of renewable energies into the grid. And I think creating this battery ecosystem, I really need to echo a lot what Florence already has put on the table. But I think we really need a systemic approach to look at how we can foster a resilient battery ecosystem in Europe. And that already starts, we have detailed out like a 4-pillar strategy to really make this stable as well. And that, of course, always starts with innovation. I think there's really a call also for the upcoming Horizon program to continue their support in investing in R&D for advanced battery technologies. This is, I think, a good opportunity for us also to develop new materials, to diversify supply chains and reduce our dependencies with the support of research. And once again here, it is really entailing batteries and chemistries for all applications, not only focused on the battery, on the automotive industry. Secondly, and that was already stated by Florence, I think we need continued support for production. And that is, I think, a toolbox that is still missing somewhat in the toolbox of the European Commission. We are very good at supporting research. We are also at a member states level quite well equipped to support incentives that stimulates the consumer goods, so the products, the finalized products as such, but not so much when it comes to production itself. itself. And I think with this industry that is still very new to us and we are still learning, there is, I think, this need for really how do you call it, the support, for financial support for success, to close this learning curve that we are currently having compared to Asian competitors. The good thing about it, it's not an indefinite support or money that we just, like the US IRA is paying out for any cells produced. We really tie it to a learning curve for our industry. And I think we can make it better even at the US IRA, and also can tie it to sustainability and resilience criteria for the ones eligible for such a support scheme. I think on the production side, it might help to some extent to close the competitiveness gap, but it's even better if we could tie it also with some made in Europe requirements to really have this European preference that you mentioned, Stefano Zorro. I know that there's a couple of legislative files that will be addressing this. I think this is much welcome from the industry, really, to stimulate and incentivize also the establishment of a domestic material production. So the supply chain for the cell production and EVs, I think it's something that we really need to take care of, and you know all about this, James, as well. And finally, as a last pillar, there is, of course, the Asian competition, a little bit the elephant in the room. I think compared to other business regions, we do not want to close the door to competition. We want to learn from them. We want to invite them also to come here to Europe to produce. But I think here the EU still needs a playbook on with some consistent rules of the game. If you want to come here, it needs to happen according to a set of rules that are implemented equally in all EU member states. That's at least a wish that we would have from the industry. And it makes it clearer as well. So if you come to Europe, you should have, for example, local workforce requirement. There are requirements if you set up a JV, how you should go about it. And by making this equally implemented in all European member states, it will also increase the competitiveness of Europe as a business region as a whole, and will avoid window shopping. Finally, I think there's also a need to diversify supply chain still in free trade agreements and partnerships when it comes to sourcing of raw materials. So with that, I think we have a good and systemic approach on how we really see how we could foster such a resilient battery ecosystem in Europe. So it's innovate, produce, buy, and secure.
Thank you, Ilka. I think I'm going to take off my jacket and roll up my sleeves because there's a lot of work that we need to do to make this happen, and I certainly can't do it on a 30-degree day outside dressed like this. Thank you. That was very good. And indeed, you're right. In Eurometa, of course, we are very interested in buy European initiatives, of course, depending on how they are designed. There's always the devil in the detail. Manasa, we are very happy to have an OEM with us today. It's a great pleasure to see you. Well, how do you see it from your side? What do you need to have happen to help you invest more in European-made batteries? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. First of all, good afternoon to everybody. It's a great pleasure for me to be joining this esteemed panel and on this very important discussion on the final day of the European Sustainable Energy Week. So thank you very much for the kind invitation. So let me get straight to the answer. Yes, we want to invest in European-made batteries, but it needs to make industrial sense, business sense. We as an OEM are faced with a very difficult equation. There is the price, the performance, the predictability, reliability, and the partnership models to some extent. And what the foreign players, the Asian players, are offering today outweigh what we can access locally. So let me break down to what we really need in order to confidently invest in European-made batteries. First is a no-brainer. I mean, it's not going to be the proximity alone that's going to be enough for sure. We need to be competitive in price as well as the performance. So every application has its peculiarities, but heavy-duty transport, I think it really kicks it up a notch because you have such varied use cases, diverse missions, very heterogeneous duty cycles, highly demanding environments. So we need battery technologies that deliver So energy densities that are high enough because payload is money for our customers, fast charging capability because uptime is gold. We need durability, we need safety, the battery to be super rugged, and all this at competitive prices. You know, we've heard before from Teo where we are standing, what is the gap, and we need to close this gap, what we have with the other players, as soon as possible. And Florence and Ilka have made some excellent point about the kind of support mechanisms that can come into place. So we need to really reward those who deliver. It's not just about funding factories, but it should be based on the actual output in order to drive down the costs. And the second point is about predictability, reliability. So we as an OEM, we are terrified about late-stage deliveries, late-stage failures, delays, batch variabilities. So we want to work together with the makers, with the battery makers, hopefully the European battery makers, in order to make sure that the technology can be integrated into the application and works under the operational realities of our missions. And we also have to have them reliable, you know, under all sort of conditions. And we need to have also some kind of a visibility, and we need to have commitment from the battery makers in terms of the timelines and in terms of the capacities, because many times we are operating in markets that are sensitive in terms of the contracts, be it with the logistic fleet operators or with the municipalities for the delivery of the buses. And the third point, it's really about the policy framework itself and the infrastructure conditions, because these two are big pieces of the puzzle that need to fall into place, the big other enabling conditions. So we don't have the trucks operating within a single state or a single region. It's mostly cross-border operations, and we need to make sure that the policies are harmonized across the EU member states. And we also need to make sure that the infrastructure is deployed at scale and at pace, because our customers need to be confident that there are charging stations along the routes. These batteries aren't going to be charging themselves, surely. And finally, it's about the partnership itself. I spoke about this a little bit before. So we want to work together, you know, to co-develop and co-engineer systems that actually work on the field. And beyond this, we are also looking for other business models, you know, based on circularity, based on second use. So we want to form strategic alliances with the battery makers. It's not just about supply agreements. So finally, to end, yes, we very much believe, we very much want to invest in European-made batteries, but we need to build all the enabling conditions around this to make this happen. Thank you.
That's super. Thank you, Manasa. And I think you've touched a lot of very, very relevant and poignant points that indeed we will have to address. I think in some areas we can say there are things like the alternative energy infrastructure regulation, which of course has been put forward to try and do that cross-border charging station. But that's only one element of all of the challenges that you've raised. And of course, you come back a little bit to Teo's presentation, where you talk in the end about price, and China is still, as you see, ahead of Europe. And I think nobody's arguing about that. I suppose the question would be whether or not we can catch up, but we'll come to that. Dear audience, we would like to see if there are any questions to come from you today. I think you've been told we do have a Slido. There we are, the Slido is coming up. I do have a couple of questions I would like to ask, then I will come to the Slido. So yes, if you would like to ask questions, please use the Slido and we will get to them. I think that the thing I would like, obviously it's a sort of elephant in the room, but I think we need to talk about it, and I think it's good to talk about it in public. And maybe, Ilka, you'd like to go first, and if anybody else would like to address, maybe also yourself, Florence. Obviously, we had the Northvolt situation. I've been myself to Skellefteå very recently. Of course, this is somehow painful. The reality is, what can we learn from this? How can we do things differently to make sure that we are more successful in the future when we are building production facilities here? I'm going to ask you to go first, if that's okay, Ilka, and then maybe anybody else who would like to add something, feel free.
Yes, that's indeed a very painful failure, I think, for Northvolt having really been this poster boy of the European battery industry and looking at like falling it into pieces in front of our eyes has been a very painful waking up, I think, for the entire ecosystem. In terms of learning, I think there is, of course, also an acknowledgement that battery production, it's very complex and it's very difficult to master this production at large scale. And there are many, many learnings, everything when it comes to the use and purchase of equipment. As I know that there have been a lot of difficulties and disruption also due to the corona pandemic that might have led to some of the issues that Northvolt has been facing in the end. There is, of course, a technology transfer also because those machinery and equipment does currently, to the main part, not come from Europe. How do you actually operate and maintain all of those equipments if there is a huge language barriers, cultural differences between the machinery and equipment supplier and the people actually on the floor working on it? Then you have to make all these complex production lines, which is really a lot of chemistry, work together in several thousand production steps, smoothly to have the battery that is working to the standards and specification that is required by the EV industry. And I think there the safety standards, they are high for a certain purpose, and that is to protect the customers, of course. And in this learning curve, there's a lot of material that doesn't go up to this high standards, and this is going to be scrapped. So in reality, it means you need to buy the materials, you need to operate the plant, but in reality, you don't get any revenues. So it's actually in this learning or ramping up phase, there's a lot of money pouring out in this ramp up phase. And I think also other battery, as Florence explained, they are experiencing similar difficulties in this ramping up phase. That makes this additional support, I think, crucial for us to actually overcome this learning curve. Then there might be a lot of other things to be said on maybe having too many projects going on at the same time, which I think is also a good learning for us, that we really should concentrate on the core of what we're trying to achieve, and that is the production of cells. Once we master that, I think then we can go maybe the Chinese way and look at vertical integration. But I think right now Europe also needs to consolidate, make sure that those projects that are already somewhat on the way succeed. To avoid those late-stage failures that Manasa mentioned. So I think now it's all hands on deck and make sure that those projects really make it to the finish line.
I can fully agree with that, Ilka. Thank you. I would like to ask Florence if you'd like to add anything to that, or whether you're okay, because you did, of course, mention this point about the ramp up when you were talking in your first initial introductory piece.
Maybe just to cope with what Ilka just said. So at Verkor, our strategy is definitely to focus on one core activity, the cell and the model production, also to deliver our pilot, our customer, and also to focus on the development of our gigafactory. It can be seen definitely as already a lessons learned from Northvolt. Yes, the ramping is a sensitive and complex process, but maybe I would stress that we are doing currently a first of its kind in Europe with this European battery industry. And in a way, it's also normal that we learn, we try, we fail, and we start again. So we are in a learning process. We are a quite young industry. I would just remind that, Verkor is 5 years old, I've said it. Other European players, similar or even younger. So we also need to accept that it takes time, definitely, to build this industry, time to build, to test, win and failed. But definitely, it's also important to stress that there are still batteries from this company in cars on the road. So we are progressing.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you indeed. I wonder if we can just bring the questions from Slido back up. Otherwise, I'm going to move into the other part that you talked about, needing supply, demand support, and you mentioned wood protection. But okay, let's have a look. There's 5 people who voted for this. How can we ensure that mining related to the growth of the battery sector does not threaten the realization of nature values and indigenous people's rights? Maybe I could answer that, but maybe Ilka, I will allow you to have a go.
Thank you. I think the Critical Raw Material Act and the launch of like what they call the strategic European projects, where you can apply and really are evaluated with very strict sustainability criteria, is a very good step forward to ensure that we actually can try to balance at least some of the conflicts. But I know that mining, it's really very difficult to place your mine somewhere else because your material is in the ground where it's in the ground due to geology. So this is something that we cannot actually change. What we can try to change is really mitigate the effect a mining operation has on its environment. And I think here the lacking experience of Europe in the mining industry, because this has disappeared from many countries, I think it's a little bit like they have very I think in their minds this is going to pollute everything, and it affects a big area. And if you're actually looking at it there, I think that if you compare it with a local shopping mall center that is built somewhere outside the town with all the asphalt, all the traffic related that we can go shopping on a Saturday afternoon, it's quite comparable, and there are very, very few protests against when something like that is designed. So I think it's also to bring back this understanding that those materials are needed for our transition. Mining will, yes, affect the nature and people that are living close to this area, but I think that it should not be exaggerated in this overall perspective what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and I would only add, I think that it's important that you mentioned, in fact, the sustainability of the nature of mining, but European mining. A lot of people think there's no mining going on in Europe. I've been down a copper mine in northern Sweden, which is state-of-the-art. It's automated, it's fully electrified. Manassa, there are high-speed charging stations 800 meters underground for the automated equipment that is used. I think there is obviously some misperception about mining as well and where the mining takes place. In Europe, we need to have more mining. We do have minerals here. When we are outside Europe, we have to see to the sustainability guidelines. There are very many different marks that are awarded different metals. We are making mining more and more sustainable. We do recognize that's a challenge, and I do think it's something that we will have to work on. I don't know, Teo, if you wanted to say something on this as well. The reality is, you have to imagine that we live with fossil fuel today. If we want to go to a metals-based economy, we can increase recycling quite strongly. But even if we go to a point where some of my members want to have only recycled product in their furnaces, we will still need to import some metals that we need because, as you said, Ilka, they're not all found here. Please, Teo.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to echo what Ilka said. I think the mining, the worrisome about mining is understandable but should not be exaggerated in a sense. And I wanted to answer 2 questions that I think are a bit behind that, because some people ask themselves, one, if we do have enough mines and enough mineral for the battery demand that is growing, and 2, if the impact that we have through mining does not overcome the advantages that we have through the batteries. And very clearly the answer for the first, yes, we do have enough minerals. The problem is not the availability of minerals, the problem is extracting them on the ground fast enough to supply demand, so it's more a project type of challenge than an availability of resources type of challenge. And the second is, when you look from a life cycle perspective, so you look at the impact of mining, refining, production, etc., and the advantage that you have in using a battery electric car or battery storage in the grids compared to the use of a conventional car or fossil fuel-based electricity production, the environmental advantage is clear. So from an overall systemic perspective, there is a clear advantage. So the answer on these 2 questions are clear. That does not undermine the fact that we should pay attention to the local environmental impact that are real, and then we should minimize, but still it's important to have the global picture in mind.
I really appreciate that. Oh, Ilka, yeah, please.
I just wanted to follow up because it also can bring us to another topic, and that is why production of those metals and minerals in Europe actually also is important. So industrial production very much compared to the battery industry, and why we should really do this. You mentioned Sweden as an example, and I think there's a very good example to be learned from something that's called the mining cluster, where you actually have an active mining industry. You have a very tightly also geographically connected to it a supplier industry for the mining industry, and then you have a strong research community, which in fact works together, advances mining, sustainable mining, and I think all of this is tightly interconnected and could also be applied on why we should have cell production in Europe. So we need these interlinkages to learn to drive innovation forward, really.
No, thank you, Ilka. And I think we've done our best between us to answer the question. So I'll move on to one more, because I would like to come to Manasseh, actually. It's the question that's at the top about local content requirements. In a way, we've kind of touched on it because it's similar to the idea of a Buy European clause. And I wonder, as a buyer, as the demand side, how do you feel about that kind of intervention in a market?
So as said before, you know, we want to source locally. It's not simply because it is more sustainable, you know, if it is European made, but it also makes sense, you know, because this kind of geographical proximity, it also promotes closer collaboration. We can co-develop the solutions with the cell makers, with the battery manufacturers, because finally we know the application the best. So absolutely, yes. I mean, this is something that we completely support, but we still don't have, you know, the ecosystem in place that can make this happen organically.
I wonder if anyone else would like to jump in on that. Yes, please, Stefano.
Yeah, on local content requirements, I mean, we have to be very clear here. No one is having a crazy dream of autarky. I mean, it's in our DNA. It's what made us what we are as Europe, the largest single market without barriers in the world. Plus, what I was mentioning before, we're not exactly self-sufficient in terms of raw materials, et cetera, so we want to stay open. The issue and the thinking behind local content requirement, non-price criteria, and everything we started doing with the Green Deal Industrial Plan, and we carried it over now to the Clean Industrial Deal and the Automotive Action Plan, is that many things have taught us that sustainability is multidimensional. We've started with climate and environmental sustainability, and this is why we want to decarbonize, this is what we want to electrify, we need batteries, but with the receding of the COVID pandemic, we've seen the markets of raw materials and energy going all over the place. So we are careful also about economic and financial sustainability of our model, and having a circular model based on electrification and on batteries helps. It's a pillar of success there. We have, and this is very important, I mentioned it before, I hope we have learned the lesson of the Russian gas and of putting our eggs in the same basket, and of you know, being penny wise and pound foolish, and of being dependent on single sources of supply. So we want to diversify supply, and diversification means having a core of autonomy. It's been loosely put at 40% as a headline objective in the Net Zero Industry Act, but we want to have a manufacturing base for critical strategic value chains in Europe, and batteries are, if not top of the list, very much close to the top of the list. And last but not least, political and geopolitical sustainability, last but not least, there's a cross-cutting element of social sustainability. We do not and cannot, and it would be stupid and self-harming to do draconian rules that apply only to ourselves, a continent which has less than 6% of the world's population and less than 7% of the global GHG emissions. And we, you know, if we decarbonize by industrializing, we would harm ourselves, harm the weakest regions of Europe, sectors, trait of the population, and then the result you see in the ballot box or in the absence of ballots in the box, for instance. And we would do the planet no favor, because we would export jobs, export emissions, et cetera, et cetera. So as I was mentioning before, with all due respect for other sectors, employment and industries, this is also the clean tech and batteries is sector with long-term employment. In general, you know, it's crossing the valley of death, et cetera, Matteo can explain that to you. But it's high value added, high skilled, high qualification industry whose jobs are really important. And this is why one visible aspect of all this thinking is having a measure of local content requirements.
Thank you.
Plus level playing field at a global level, but you know, we don't have the whole day.
No, unfortunately we don't, because I think we could actually go on quite a long time. And I think we could say from a Eurometto position, it totally depends how, when you look at things like local content requirements, how you actually align it. And when we looked at things like Rearm Europe, for example, there's about 65% has to be made in the European geographical zone. How is that then translated into things like a car? How is that translated into a battery? So yes, lead markets with a Buy European clause could be interesting, but it depends very much, as you say, how that fits into overall the global context. We're running out of time because we have to let other people come and stand up. So what I want to do is, that last question that came up, it's sort of gone in a minute. It was about the price of Chinese batteries compared to European ones. And I had a question myself, which had come out of the conversation we had earlier. And so consider this the last question and also your opportunity to say your final piece. Can we in Europe catch up with China in batteries? I'm going to start with you as usual, Ilka, as the representative of the 360 value chain. But if anybody else would like to come in, I think Florence and Manasseh, it would be good if you could also give a little view on that. But your closing statement, please, about 1 minute, and I'll be a bit more, should I say, a bit more insistent on time for these last minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think the short answer is yes, I'm still convinced that we can develop a resilient battery ecosystem in Europe. I think there are many opportunities. Right now, there are, as I mentioned previously, there are other sectors, other niche applications where actually also it will give Europe some time and room to develop new chemistries, new applications. I think maybe the mass market is a little bit harder to catch, but in good cooperation and good rules of the game, I think there will be a battery industry in Europe.
Sorry, Florence. Yeah. Oh, Manasseh then, please. Confusion reigns.
Who got to the button first? I would like to very quickly make a dissemination or a publicity about an excellent advocacy paper that was published by BEPA on how Europe must not just run the sprint, but also the marathon of innovation and industrialization. There are some very inspiring and strong messages out there, how we need to focus on the 4S, the scope, the scale, the speed, and the sustainability. We need to really find that unique value proposition, because right now the time is too late for us to just copy what the others have done and try to make incremental improvements through trial and error. You know, we need to really define our unique value proposition, let it be sustainability, circularity, digitally traceable from mines to mobility or whatever application. And of course, we need these enabling conditions. You know, we need to build a very strong ecosystem that can survive, sustain, and be resilient, and finally be competitive, you know, for it to be taken up by the market. So I stay strongly positive.
Yeah, that's very good, Manasseh, as well. And it's always good to remember that we have to also think differently and not just try to copy. But this does definitely go into what the next session will be about with Beatrice. But thank you very much. On to you, Florence.
I will simply repeat what my previous statement. So yes, we can be competitive. We can have a competitive battery value chain, provided we receive support during the early years of our establishment. And once again, we have shown that we are taking our part. We are tackling the challenge by proposing a support which is limited in the time and also digressive.
Thank you very much, Florence. Dear audience, you've heard it. Yes, we can. Let's remember those good old days, those good monikers. Of course, it was the statements of President Obama. Let us not forget that. Yes, we can. We can do this in Europe. We have everything we need. We just need to get the ingredients and the mix right. I would like to thank the panelists. I'm going to hand back to Wouter, who will then take us through the final interview with Beatrice. But please give the panelists a round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great job, James. Thank you, panelists, for your insights. It was really useful to see your different perspectives on the value chain and the challenges that are there. So, already mentioned quite a few times in the panel discussion, also in the many questions that came into the Slido. So, thank you all for asking the questions. A lot of questions also were related to research and innovation. What do we need there to actually get into a position to be competitive? As mentioned by Ilka. So to answer those questions, we have with us Beatrice Coda. She's now the head of unit of the Clean Energy Transition Unit in the Directorate of Research and Innovation, DG RTD. And within that unit, you oversee also the BAT4EU partnership. It is the Research and Innovation Partnership under Horizon Europe, in which the European Commission works together with us, BEPA, which is, of course, as you see, a very big group. Manas already proudly was a part of it, but we also span the entire value chain from mining until recycling. So, Beatrice, this partnership between the European Commission and industry and research stakeholders has been going on now since 2021. What are for you the main results that we now have in Europe thanks to this BAT4EU partnership?
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for inviting me to present a bit the perspective of research and innovation in battery and with the partnership that we have with BAT4EU. I think it's very important that we have this debate, particularly at the EUSEW, so the European Sustainable Energy Week, because that recognizes the importance of batteries, not only for clean mobility, I think, but also, let's say, the growing use of batteries in the energy sector, and of course also in other sectors. So I think this is very topical and very timely that we discuss this today. I'm very proud that we managed with my team the partnership with BAT4EU, and I'm very happy how, let's say, this partnership and this collaboration is ongoing. At the basic level, I think you asked me what are the main results so far. So BAT4EU was established in 2021, and there was a lot of effort being put by the European Commission to really bring together a sector, all, let's say, the stakeholders, the R&I stakeholders in batteries in Europe. Before it was scattered, also across different programs, different work programs and areas. And now with the partnership, we have achieved really a single place where you can, really plan according to a common strategic research and innovation agenda all the batteries activities. In particular, I'm focusing here on the mid-TRL, let's say, research, on collaborative research. Now, the maximum support via Horizon Europe through the BAT4EU is 925 million euro. We are so far in the middle. So far, we have 79 projects which are up and running for a support of 480 million euros. So there's still, let's say, some budget and more projects in preparation, and I will talk about that. And they don't only focus on mobility, on clean mobility, but they span across also other sectors, including stationary, but also across horizontal R&I challenges, which are materials, advanced materials, testing, recycling, and so on. Now, it's still too early to discuss about the concrete results of the projects, because the projects were just set up, and it takes time for them to realize. But we can say preliminarily that we see very good progress in all the areas. And we see indeed also a very growing interest in the sector and in the calls that we launch. So I think this effort to bring together all the, the main stakeholders in R&I is already bringing these fruits forward. And this is this ecosystem, I think, that was recalled by our previous speakers. And this clustering also provides for us an excellent platform for big back-to policy, suggestions also for future exploration or regulatory challenges. So in a way, I think the main result so far and the biggest impact that the partnership is having is to structure this, the battery landscape, at least as far as R&I is concerned, and also link with other initiatives of simplification and uniting, like, for example, the battery alliance. So we are happy that we have, BEPA representing a huge number of members. I think you are 260 members so far. That there is a speaking with one voice, and that it's very, let's say, growing and visible at international level. The Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda, it's a document that is used at the Commission across, let's say, all departments and services. But we see also that more and more other stakeholders and our member states, let's not forget that we don't only have Horizon Europe as a funding for research and innovation in Europe, but this is also, let's say, the fact that more and more there is this collaboration and reaching out to the member states via the strategic research agenda, also by the BEPA stakeholders, is, I think, a great, let's say, step forward also to identify synergies and complementarities in Europe.
Yeah, exactly. We've tried to set out a red line for everybody to join and to crowd in, and it's really encouraging to see national research programs aligning with the European agenda. For the people who are interested in these research calls, they are online right now. There are several calls published. First deadlines are in September, so check them out and engage with the community if you're interested in joining one of those calls. All calls are collaborative, so you have a lot of stakeholders from different sides of the value chain, academia and industry. So they're very interesting projects. Which brings me to the next question. We're here at the EU Sustainable Energy Week, which is, for me, a very interesting conference because the scope is so broad. Of course, the challenge is so big in Europe, but it also means that you have a massive amount of stakeholders doing all kinds of different things. So what do you think that we can still have for linkages, other partnerships from the battery sector on innovation going forward?
Yeah. Yes, in fact, thanks, Wouter, for recalling that we have a, let's say, work program adopted and calls that, of course, all stakeholders are welcome to join, because the partnership is an open partnership. And but in terms, let's say, of what's coming in the future, we are preparing now the next phase, the last phase of Horizon Europe, so until 2027. And also there, I think we are continuing very well in having this holistic approach in terms of collaborative research. Collaborative research means really bringing these stakeholders together. So the key stakeholders here are for battery innovation is, I think, ensuring really this supporting the entire supply chain. So again, from the raw material, from upscaling advanced material, from manufacturing, and also for using. And I think also one approach that is very, very promising is that in many projects, you also involve, let's say, or we are requesting the participation of equipment manufacturers in the way that the batteries that will be produced as a result of the project, they precisely respond to the requirements of the end user and foreseeing, let's say, operating conditions. So the fact that collaborative research allows this unique opportunity to collaborate with, R&I, let's say, stakeholders, but also with equipment manufacturers and already projecting to the end use is, a promising, this is the promising avenue for advancing also on the innovation value chain. And in terms of how we can promote further the collaboration, I think it's very important to, and this is, I think, what you are doing already well, to look for establishing also links with other partnerships in Europe to seek synergies. So I know you are collaborating with, for example, partnerships in the automotive and the aviation sector, like 2.0 and Caju. In the future, why not think of, let's say, a partnership or working closer, for example, with the solar sector, where they need also batteries, for integration in the grid to develop maybe tailored solution. We know the stationary is a really growing market for batteries. And last but not least, in the work program 26-27, the current draft is also publicly available. So for those who want to have a look, we can provide the link later. There is also, we see innovative approaches also to support from batteries, also energy-intensive industries. So this is a new type of collaboration. I think this is very welcome to see what type of, let's say, new avenues towards deploying batteries in this sector will arise. And again, I can only stress this collaboration not only at European level, but again at national level with member states. We have in Europe an overarching policy framework or policy umbrella for clean energy technologies between the European Commission and member states, which we call a SET plan, Strategic Energy Technology Plan. And the batteries are part of it. So this is where we as Commission intend to align, and it's very, very complex on what are, let's say, the R&I priorities for, in the different technologies. And this is also from the Commission is something that, of course, we are fostering with member states, and where we also want to bring, of course, in this, let's say, platform also the partnership, the European technology partnerships, or other associations are, of course, welcome to bring the industrial perspective. So this is work that will continue. SET plan is now part of the net zero industry context for bringing also R&I for deployment, so from a strategic perspective, and batteries, of course, are part of this discussion.
Yeah. We heard that one of the business drivers is the high energy cost, the first one in the list, and really hoping that future efforts on helping these high energy intensive industries also decarbonize through batteries can really help with that respect. We heard Florence talk about the different innovation gaps, valley of death, whatever you want to call it, that you have to go through when you're scaling up, when you're trying to get your promising research results actually to a product, to the market. So how can we help these battery project actually where Verkor is also taking part in to actually make sure that those results get to a state where they can be in the gigafactory or in a truck or on the road?
Yeah. Yes, indeed. So scaling up, there are, and bringing, let's say, bridging this innovation gap, there are two innovation gaps. No, it's having the first of a kind, but also then the scaling up, the second valley of death. Now, I agree that in Europe, we have already a number of instruments. This is, let's say, not enough. That's why we are trying to set up new instruments and hopefully, let's say, more powerful instruments that will also boost this. This is what is needed for batteries and also for other clean tech technologies. We have, for example, we have already, other instruments that complement the collaborative research, which are in Horizon, for example, the European Innovation Council. It's an instrument that dedicates, let's say, a part of the support to the high TRL and to the, let's say, upscale towards deployment. There is the announcement of of the Commission in the startup and scale-up strategy, which was adopted at the end of the month of last month, to increase the support to the EIC, but also to have a dedicated fund, which will be called the Scale Up Europe Fund, which will be linked to the EIC fund to really, let's say, to support this scaling up. This is, for the time being, only technology agnostic announcements, but they will be for sure, I think, very, very relevant for the battery sectors. And I think we can also mention that there are other, we have discussed the Clean Industrial Deal, and therefore complementing what Stefan has already said. We also have, the Affordable Energy Action Plan with the aim to bring energy prices down in Europe, and that's particularly for the energy intensive industries, and overall reducing electricity cost, will help also to cut the cost of batteries. So we hope that this will be also a very good, important initiative. This will be complemented also by the electrification action plan, which is coming, I think, at the end of the year, so it's under preparation. And we should push further the investment in grids, electrification of building, industry and transport, and therefore, I mean, batteries, they are really, of course, a very key component on that. There's also been the announcement of the European Commission of, let's say, putting into a regulatory, let's say, into legislation, a number of elements of the startup and scale-up strategy and the European Innovation Act. That will be, let's say, also binding requirements for what concerns regulatory sandboxes, so to test new ideas for innovators. So this hopefully will be also another opportunity for support on innovation in batteries. And also in terms of materials, we have the Critical Raw Materials Act, but this will be also complemented by an Advanced Materials Act also foreseen for next year to support the life cycle of advanced material, including research innovation. So these are all, let's say, activities which are under development by the Commission. Of course, here the big elephant in the room is also the next framework program, and the competitiveness fund. So we cannot announce anything, and we, let's say, next month will be, let's say, the big announcements from on the adoption of this new instrument, which is supposed to, really boost the entire value, the entire, chain, from bringing also, let's say, research innovation closer really to deployment and support to deployment, so from proof of concept to market introduction. So I think we cannot really say much about competitiveness fund now. We cannot say much really about what will be the future, I think, of the partnership, which will continue, at least in its current form, until 2027, and with the projects that will continue, of course, after. But I think we can, and this discussion makes it very clear that, we will continue to support the battery innovation. I think this debate also shows that we still need a lot to bridge this competitiveness gap with our competitors, and R&I in batteries, I think, is still very, very much needed as a part, let's say, of this overall strategy for Europe to deploy batteries, European batteries in Europe. And last message is really that personally, I also, by working with the partnership and with BEPA, I also believe personally that, let's say, support to the entire innovation ecosystem is the way that we should continue also in the future, no matter how, let's say, these instruments will be set up. But I think we have also strong support there from our side. Yeah.
Thank you so much for giving this. Yes, still many things in the works to be done in the future. Hope it will be deployed at the speed, because as Manassa said, we're running a sprint and a marathon at the same time right now. Let's see if there's any questions coming in. I saw already some questions about people talking about the latest state of technology in batteries. I would also like to refer to you to this technology talks that we organize with BEPA. The recordings are online available. We go basically every month, we take a different topic, stationary storage or solid-state batteries, and then provide a state of the art and invite some key stakeholders to discuss them. So if you have specific questions, check that out. And you also mentioned the startup strategy. Also every month we organize a startup lunch. So it's just an hour over lunchtime where 4 to 5 startups get to present themselves. And if you want to really know what's going on in terms of innovative startups in the battery field, join that. There was also already a question in the Q&A earlier. Maybe we can put up the Q&A again to see if there's any further questions about to learn from other countries. And there was also a point that was raised by Ilka. How do you see the ascension of Korea and Canada, for example, into Horizon Europe as opportunities for the battery world?
Well, I think let's say, a bit delicate question, but I think there are ways with these countries to, come to a common ground on what topics we can potentially collaborate. So I think there are already, let's say, some work ongoing in that direction. I know Canada is quite interested also in, for example, in the entire aviation sector. So they're now, I think, with the new geopolitical context, quite interested to collaborate with us. So we can, of course, discuss also with you, with the, let's say, how this is seen from, let's say, competitiveness perspective of our, let's say, European stakeholders. But it is possible, let's say, also an avenue where that we can explore and to support, let's say, closer collaboration.
Yeah. See a question coming in on what changes can Europe take to explore new technology and chemistries to become a leader rather than playing catch up, which is a very broad question. It's basically the raison d'être for the Bad for You partnership as such. I don't know if I maybe take this one. I think one of the key pillars also of the Bad for You partnership has been a strong linking with the digital community, with especially developments through AI, trying to do the work that you would normally have 6 PhD with a nice test tube doing over a whole weekend. You can just do it, close the door at night and just let the computer do it, and in the morning you have the results. So I think that's definitely one of the key things where we can accelerate in Europe to make sure that and it doesn't depend on one chemistry or the other, it's just you can boost research in all fronts. Maybe another, you also mentioned there was a point on member state integration. How do you think that we can get them more on board or at least on the same line?
Well, I mentioned already that we have, so there are, let's say, several ways of collaboration with member states. And, but for us, in terms of, let's say, energy technologies, I mentioned that we have, let's say, a policy that works already for many years, which is the SET plan as a, let's say, overarching umbrella. Now this policy is integrated in the Net Zero Industry Act. So there is a formation of a high-level steering group, which is an expert group. And so now this discussion, so now we can align Europe with member states. They really take place at a very high strategic level. The Commission has also announced in the Competitiveness Compass the coordination tool. So in key areas that I think is still under exploration with what with this. So I think also which areas will be coordinated, I think is still under discussion. But I mean, this is already, let's say, end
the session here, Beatrice.
Yeah. So this is a tool also to engage at very high level how we can really align on strategic priorities.
So. Thank you all. A lot of work to be done, indeed. I'm getting quite warm as well in my jacket. We need to run now, the marathon and the sprint. So thank you all for joining. I hope it was inspiring. I hope you know what to do, and we need to do a lot. So we need everybody to join us and help win this race. Thank you so much.